The case of Alara of Wickham occupied my thoughts. Accused of poisoning her husband, Lord Alaric, the whispers painted her as a viper in the guise of a loving wife. The court records, however, were less certain, riddled with hearsay and circumstantial evidence. Yet, the weight of Alaric's lineage pressed heavily on the scales of justice. Geoffrey prepared the tools of his trade, the axe gleaming ominously. Such preparations always precede the day of trial. It was said Alara's demeanor had been stony, devoid of emotion, neither denying nor admitting to the crime. It was for the jury to decide. News of Alara's trial had reached even the smallest corners of the village. Agnes, drawing water from the well, overheard whispers of witchcraft and betrayal. The fear of noble influence weighed on the small town. Agnes, however, was less sure. Perhaps there were circumstances the court didn't understand. The trial commenced. Lord Alaric's kin painted a grim picture of Alara, a woman consumed by greed and ambition, eager to inherit his wealth. Their testimonies, impassioned and persuasive, swayed the assembled onlookers. Alara, for her part, offered little in her defense. She maintained her innocence, but her voice lacked conviction. The evidence, though circumstantial, mounted against her. The court of peers seemed unperturbed. I spent nights poring over legal texts, seeking to understand the basis for such convictions. The medieval legal system, a patchwork of Roman law, canon law, and local customs, often prioritized social order over individual justice. The power of the nobility was all but absolute. Geoffrey sought solace in the local tavern, drowning his thoughts in ale. He knew the weight of the coming sentence, regardless of guilt or innocence. The executioner's life was one of constant grim necessity. The villagers debated Alara's fate, their opinions divided. Some clamored for swift justice, while others whispered of mercy and understanding. The common punishments were horrific: hanging, drawing and quartering, burning, each one more grisly than the last. The verdict came swiftly: guilty. Alara was sentenced to be burned at the stake, a punishment reserved for the most heinous of crimes, heresy and treason being prime examples. My heart sank. Justice, it seemed, was often blind to the nuances of truth. Geoffrey began preparations for the execution. He and his master constructed the pyre in the town square. The town was morbidly abuzz with the news. Even the children seemed excited. Agnes watched, a knot forming in her stomach. The spectacle of suffering was a dark undercurrent of medieval life, a grim reminder of the power wielded by the lords and the fragility of life itself. She found her curiosity battling with her conscience. As the pyre was completed, I returned to my chamber, the image of Alara's face etched in my mind. I chronicled the events, but the words felt hollow, failing to capture the complex tapestry of justice, power, and the human condition. The spectacle of suffering, it seemed, would continue to haunt these lands. Hanging, a seemingly simple act, has long been a favored tool of justice, or rather of power. Its prevalence stems perhaps from its ready availability, a rope and a sturdy tree being all that is required. Yet, simplicity belies a spectrum of cruelty, varying from swift dispatch to agonizing prolongation. For Sergeant Geoffrey, the hanging is a matter of mechanics. The rope must be strong, the knot secure, the drop sufficient. Failure in any of these can lead to complications, and complications are rarely clean. For Agnes, like many in the crowd, the hanging is a spectacle, a grim reminder of the consequences of transgression. Fear and fascination war within her, a common struggle among the onlookers. I have read accounts of short drop hangings, where death is slow and agonizing, the condemned choking for breath until their neck finally breaks, if it breaks at all. A barbarous practice, seemingly designed to prolong suffering rather than deliver justice. The length of the drop is crucial. Too short and the prisoner slowly strangles. Too long and the head might be torn clean from the body. Neither outcome serves the purpose of a swift, decisive punishment, though some might argue they amplify the spectacle. The crowd murmurs, speculating on the condemned's crimes, their faces a mixture of anticipation and fear. The air crackles with a strange energy, a morbid excitement that Agnes both craves and despises. The symbolism of hanging is not lost on me. To be suspended between heaven and earth, rejected by both, is a potent image of damnation. It serves as a stark warning, a visual representation of the fate awaiting those who defy the laws of God and man. The deed is done. The body swings, a grotesque puppet dancing in the wind. Geoffrey averts his gaze, the image seared into his memory. Another soul dispatched, another day closer to his own reckoning. The crowd's roar is deafening, a collective release of pent-up emotions. Agnes feels a strange mixture of revulsion and relief. The spectacle is over, but the image will linger in her mind for days to come. I pray for the soul of the condemned, and for the souls of those who find pleasure in this grim spectacle. I pray for a time when justice is tempered with mercy, and when the shedding of blood is no longer considered a form of entertainment. Geoffrey cleans the rope, coiling it carefully. He will use it again. He always does. It is his duty, his burden, a burden he carries in silence day after day. Agnes cannot shake the image from her mind. The swinging body, the roar of the crowd, the weight of death. She wonders if she will ever be free from the spectacle of suffering. Beheading. The very word carries a certain weight. Unlike the crude efficiency of the noose, beheading has long been associated with nobility, a clean death, a privilege afforded to those of high birth, or so the pretense goes. The reality, of course, is far less romantic. The axe, the block, the sheer, brutal force required. There is little dignity in the act itself, regardless of the condemned's lineage. Historically, beheading's association with status is evident. Common criminals face the gallows, their bodies left to rot as a warning. The noble, however, received the axe, their heads often displayed separately, a grim testament to their fall from grace, yet a recognition of their former standing. The executioner, a figure of dread and necessity. His skill, or lack thereof, could determine the swiftness and perceived mercy of the end. A clean blow, severing the head in one stroke, was considered a sign of a master craftsman. Agnes, like many, had never witnessed a beheading. The rumors and whispered tales painted a gruesome picture. She found herself drawn to the spectacle, despite the knot of fear tightening in her stomach. Geoffrey's role was to assist, to ensure the block was secure, the condemned properly positioned. He had seen too many botched executions, too many agonizing deaths. He prayed for a quick end for the sake of the condemned and for his own peace of mind. From my vantage point, I could see the tension etched on every face. The anticipation was palpable, a collective holding of breath before the inevitable release. Agnes squeezed her eyes shut, but the image burned behind her eyelids. The flash of steel, the hush of the crowd, the terrible finality of the moment. Afterward, the silence was broken by a collective sigh. Geoffrey moved quickly, helping to clear the block, the image of the fallen noble already fading into the endless procession of the condemned. The crowd dispersed, each carrying their own impressions of the event. Some with a sense of justice served, others with a lingering unease. and I with the heavy burden of recording it all. Agnes hurried home, the image of the execution seared into her memory. She wondered if she would ever be able to forget the spectacle and what it said about the world they lived in. Another execution recorded, another entry in the chronicle of suffering. The weight of these observations grows heavier with each passing day. But I must continue to write, to bear witness to these dark realities, in the hope that one day, perhaps, humanity will find a better path. Drawing and quartering. The very words are a venomous draught to the soul. I am tasked with chronicling these events, yet each stroke of the quill feels like a betrayal of God's grace. How can one reconcile faith with such barbarity? It is said that drawing and quartering is reserved for the most heinous of crimes, treason, rebellion against the crown. Geoffrey tells me the weight of the axe has increased. It's not the axe, Master Cranmer, he'd said, his voice low. It's what it must do. He prepares the tools, as always, with a grim professionalism that belies the turmoil I suspect rages within him. Drawing and quartering. Even the seasoned executioners feel the weight of such actions. The whispers travel like wildfire. Thomas Dacre, a nobleman accused of conspiring against the king, is to be drawn and quartered. Agnes, like many others, is drawn to the spectacle, a dark fascination battling with the inherent repulsion. They say his family has a long-held claim to the throne, but his challenge has earned him a traitor's death. The condemned Thomas Dacre is brought forth. He is dragged on a hurdle, a wooden frame, through the streets, a symbolic humiliation before the true agony begins. This drawing, as it is called, is the first act of this grotesque ritual. Geoffrey, his face impassive, secures Dacre to the frame. The crowd roars, a cacophony of jeers and shouts. It is a hungry beast, demanding its fill of suffering. Agnes shrinks back, the reality of the situation crashing down upon her. The festive atmosphere has evaporated, replaced by a palpable sense of dread. She wonders if Dacre is truly guilty, or merely a pawn in a larger game. I cannot bring myself to watch the disemboweling. They say it is done to publicly display the traitor's entrails, a final act of degradation. I pray for his soul, and for the souls of all those who participate in this gruesome spectacle. Geoffrey continues his work, his movements precise and practiced. He has seen this countless times, yet I cannot imagine it ever becoming routine. The air is thick with the stench of blood and fear. Agnes can take no more. She pushes through the crowd, desperate to escape the horrors she has witnessed. The image of the disembowelment is seared into her memory, a constant reminder of the brutality of the world. The quartering is swift, brutal. The 4 parts of Dacre's body are displayed in different corners of the kingdom, a stark warning to any who would defy the crown. This is the final, chilling act of drawing and quartering. Geoffrey cleans his tools, the task methodical and detached. I wonder if he ever questions the justice of these acts, or if he has simply become numb to the suffering. I return to my chronicles, the task before me heavier than ever. How does one record such barbarity without becoming complicit in it? Drawing and quartering, a stain on the soul of this nation, a testament to the darkness that resides within us all. And how many more Ilaras and Dacres will suffer such a fate? Only time will tell, and I will be here to chronicle it all, a silent witness to the spectacle of suffering. Burning at the stake, a method steeped in religious fervor and societal terror. Unlike the swiftness of the axe, the flames offered a slow, agonizing demise, reserved for those deemed the gravest threat to the spiritual order, heretics and witches. The fires purged not only the body, but, it was believed, the very soul. The preparation was deliberate. faggots, bundles of dry wood meticulously stacked around the stake. The choice of wood itself was said to matter, certain types believed to burn hotter, cleaner, offering a swifter end, though such mercies were rarely intended. The crowds gathered, a sea of faces expectant, fearful, and yes, even excited. The burning was always a spectacle, a lesson, they said, a cleansing. But I saw something else in their eyes, a morbid fascination, a release of pent-up anxieties. The church justified it, of course. Heresy was a cancer, they claimed, and fire was the only cure. But the flames seemed to devour more than just flesh. They consumed reason, compassion, and perhaps even faith itself. The condemned were often paraded through the streets beforehand, a final humiliation. Confessions, whether genuine or coerced, were read aloud, reinforcing the narrative of guilt and justifying the impending agony. It fell to men like Geoffrey to ignite the flame. A grim task, performed with a practiced hand, but I often wondered what thoughts crossed his mind in those moments. The screams, they were the worst part. The sound of flesh burning, the desperate cries for mercy, quickly silenced by the roaring flames. It was a sound that haunted dreams and lingered long after the embers cooled. I could not bear to watch. The smoke, thick with the scent of burning flesh, choked the air and filled my soul with despair. Was this truly God's will? Could such brutality ever be justified? The fire burned for hours, reducing the body to ash. A final, absolute obliteration. A warning, etched in smoke and bone, to those who dared to question the established order. Later I tried to wash away the memory, the smell, the sound. But the images lingered, burned into my mind as surely as the woman had been burned at the stake. Doubts gnawed at me. Was she truly guilty? Did she deserve such a fate? Geoffrey sought solace in the bottom of a tankard. The fire purged the heretic's soul, they said, but what cleansed the soul of the man who lit the flame? The stars offered no answers, only a vast, indifferent silence. I fear the spectacle of suffering has begun to consume me. I pray for guidance, for understanding, but the flames continue to burn in my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that dwells within the hearts of men. The air crackles not only with anticipation but with a strange, almost festive energy. The crowd gathers, a living tapestry woven from fear, morbid curiosity, and a thirst for something I cannot quite name. They come not to mourn, it seems, but to witness. Agnes, like so many others, is drawn here by an invisible force. Is it the spectacle itself, the promise of witnessing justice served? Or is it something darker, a primal urge to confront mortality in its most brutal form? Geoffrey, ever stoic, stands apart. Perhaps he is immune to the crowd's fervor, or perhaps he simply understands its shallowness better than I do. He sees the mechanics of death, the raw, unvarnished reality that lies beneath the spectacle. The cheers are the most unsettling, a collective roar that seems to feed on the anticipation of violence. Are they celebrating justice, or simply reveling in the misfortune of another? I struggle to discern the difference. Agnes betrays the more common reaction. The shouts and jeers seem to startle her, reminding her of the true brutality that is about to unfold. Yet she remains, her feet rooted to the spot, unable to tear herself away. Geoffrey ignores the noise, focusing on the task at hand. Precision is paramount. He cannot afford to falter, not for the sake of the condemned, but for the sake of order, of a clean spectacle. The dehumanization is swift and brutal. Once a person, now an object of scorn, a target for the crowd's pent-up frustrations. The fruit, the stones, the insults, they are all weapons in this macabre theater. The moment of truth arrives. A hush falls over the crowd, a pregnant silence broken only by the rustling of clothes and the ragged breaths of those closest to the spectacle. All eyes are fixed on the executioner and the condemned, even Agnes, whose gaze seems transfixed. The deed is done. Geoffrey's work is far from over. The body must be prepared, the scene cleaned. He moves with a practiced efficiency, a grim craftsman fulfilling his duty. I retreat to my chambers, seeking solace in the silence. But the echoes of the crowd, the image of the fallen body, linger in my mind. Can justice truly be served in such a manner? Or does this spectacle merely serve to debase us all? Agnes walks away, changed perhaps by what she has witnessed. Will she be haunted by the spectacle, or will she simply return to her daily life, the memory fading with time? I can only wonder. The spectacle is over, but its impact lingers. I must continue to chronicle these events, to bear witness to the darkness that resides within us all. Perhaps, in understanding this darkness, we can find a path towards the light. The church, a bedrock of our world, yet a labyrinth of justifications when it comes to the shedding of blood. How can the representatives of a merciful God preside over such barbarity? Is it truly His will that we inflict such suffering? Geoffrey seeks solace, or perhaps forgiveness, in the house of God. Does he believe absolution can wash away the stains of his trade? Or is it simply fear of eternal damnation that drives him to these hollow rituals? Agnes, like many, sees the church as both a source of comfort and a tool of control. She likely believes in redemption, but the priest's words of divine justice only reinforce the fear instilled by the upcoming spectacle. I dared to question the bishop's assertion that executions were a necessary purging of sin. He spoke of divine retribution, of the need to cleanse the community. But I saw only needless cruelty masquerading as piety. Geoffrey's faith seems a strange companion to his profession. Is it a genuine plea for mercy, or a desperate attempt to reconcile his actions with his conscience? The preacher's fire and brimstone sermon serves as a chilling prelude to the execution. Religion, in this context, becomes a tool to control behavior through fear of eternal damnation. I scour the scriptures seeking a passage that justifies such blatant cruelty. Yet, the words of Christ preach forgiveness, compassion, and love. Where then is the divine sanction for this barbarity? Even Geoffrey offers a form of solace, a final prayer before the inevitable. Perhaps he sees it as his duty to prepare the soul for its journey to the afterlife, a grim task born of his grim profession. The church's involvement adds a layer of legitimacy to the execution, transforming a brutal act into a sacred ritual. Agnes, like the others, is caught between the fear of sin and the morbid fascination with its punishment. I can no longer reconcile my faith with this spectacle. The church claims to offer redemption, yet it actively participates in the destruction of life. Is this truly the path to salvation? The priest's blessing feels hollow, a perfunctory act that cannot cleanse the guilt that clings to Geoffrey like the blood on his hands. He is a tool of justice, but at what cost to his own soul? Agnes seeks solace in the ritual, hoping to find forgiveness for her own sins and for the collective guilt of the community. The church, for all its contradictions, remains a beacon of hope in a world steeped in violence and despair. The echoes of the spectacle linger long after the crowds disperse. The dust settles, the blood dries, but the air remains thick with an unspoken dread. My task is to record, but how does one chronicle the absence of life, the gaping hole left in the fabric of our community? Geoffrey, the instrument of justice, or so they call him. He walks away, but the block remains, a mute testament to his grim work. Does he feel the weight of the lives he's helped extinguish, or is he merely a cog in the brutal machine of our society? Agnes, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination, witnessed the execution. Now she sits withdrawn, haunted by the images seared into her mind. The spectacle, once a source of morbid excitement, now casts a dark shadow over her ordinary life. The condemned's family, what of them? Shunned, ostracized, their lives forever tainted by the actions of one of their own. I offer what comfort I can, a prayer, a kind word, but it is a meager offering against the storm of grief and shame. The ale flows freely, a temporary balm for Geoffrey's troubled soul. But drink cannot erase the faces of the condemned, the pleas for mercy, the sickening thud of the axe. He seeks oblivion but finds only a fleeting respite. Life returns to the market square, but the stain remains, both literally and figuratively. Agnes scrubs at the blood, a futile attempt to cleanse not just the stones, but her own conscience. The spectacle is over, but its impact lingers. The bodies are unceremoniously dumped into a mass grave, their names and deeds fading into the earth. I offer a prayer, a plea for mercy in the afterlife, but I cannot help but wonder if justice has truly been served. The axe must be sharpened, the tools made ready. Geoffrey prepares for the next spectacle, the next act of sanctioned violence. He is trapped in this cycle, a prisoner of his own profession. Agnes avoids the market square now, the site of so much bloodshed. The memory of the executions casts a pall over her daily life, a constant reminder of the fragility of human existence. My chronicles grow thicker, a testament to the ever-present spectacle of suffering. But do these words truly convey the horror, the injustice, the profound moral cost of these public executions? I fear they fall short, mere shadows of the reality. The blood is never truly washed away. It stains his hands, his clothes, his very soul. Geoffrey, the executioner's assistant, is condemned to carry this burden for the rest of his days. In the quiet sanctuary of the church, Agnes seeks solace and forgiveness. She prays for the souls of the condemned, and perhaps for the soul of a society that finds entertainment in such brutality. The spectacle is over, but its echoes reverberate through the hearts and minds of all who witnessed it. The Spectacle of Suffering, a title I chose with a heavy heart. It is the only phrase that seems to encapsulate the era I have been forced to chronicle. An era defined by blood, fear, and the chillingly theatrical display of justice. Even those who wielded the instruments of death were not immune to its poison. Sergeant Geoffrey, a man hardened by his grim duty, carried the weight of each swing in the depths of his eyes. He was a reflection of the darkness we have embraced. And the people, the crowds who gathered with morbid fascination, were they merely spectators, or did they, too, bear some responsibility for the horrors enacted before them? Agnes, like so many others, was caught in the web of fear and morbid curiosity. The allure of public executions lay not only in the spectacle itself, but in the reinforcement of power. A king's decree, a lord's judgment, etched in blood upon the public square. Fear was the mortar that held the kingdom together. The social fabric was warped, twisted by the constant threat of violence. Children grew up witnessing the most brutal acts, their innocence stolen by the omnipresent shadow of the gallows. Yet even in the darkest of times, hope flickers. Perhaps one day, justice will be tempered with mercy, and the thirst for public blood will be quenched by compassion. Even Geoffrey, hardened as he was, felt the sting of it. He began to question, to hesitate. Such thoughts, though whispered only in his own heart, are the seeds of change. Agnes, too, started to see the horror and tried to protect her children from it. Protecting the new generation is all that can bring a brighter future. The echoes of these brutal spectacles reverberate through the centuries, shaping our modern attitudes towards capital punishment. We have moved, albeit slowly, towards a more humane system, but the shadow of the past still lingers. My task is complete, the chronicle is finished, but the story of suffering, I fear, will continue to be written in different forms in different eras. Let us pray that future generations will learn from the mistakes of the past, that justice will be tempered with mercy, and that the spectacle of suffering will become nothing more than a dark chapter in the history books. The pen is laid to rest. May peace and wisdom prevail.